Good afternoon, viewers. Hope you all are well and safe. Dear viewers, you all know that Anal 24 TV broadcasts this show Law with Mahbub Toha every Saturday UK time at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and Europe time at 6 o'clock. We usually try to update you about all the latest immigration laws and we discuss some important issues or topic which was not that much discussed before. For this, we invite a renowned personnel from law professionals to discuss on those immigration laws. Therefore, today we invited a special guest who is not only a lawyer but a human rights activist who is campaigning for the immigrants, especially those who are staying in the UK without proper documents. He is a public access barrister and head of Imperium Chambers, Mr. Paul Turner. You can find him on Twitter, Facebook with his continuous updates on immigration laws. You may watch his video vlogs, subscribing his YouTube channel. However, we want to introduce you all with our today's guest, Mr. Paul Turner. Welcome to our program. How are you today?
I'm very well. Thank you again, Mahab, for inviting me. I think it's always better to be able to talk live to people rather than just watching videos or just reading articles, because you can get much more detail out of it and hopefully it's more interesting. So I'm very well and I hope you are, and I hope all our viewers are as well, especially with the state of the country and coronavirus.
Yes, we are very honored to have you here. Mr. Turner, I want to divide our program in two segments. First part is a topic-based discussion, and in the second part, we'll try to answer some questions as our viewers dropped it in our Facebook inbox. You know, there are so many types of visas for coming and staying in UK. We therefore want to discuss about two types of visas, which is more suitable for businessmen who wants to do business in UK, and on that basis they can stay here permanently. Firstly, I'd like to ask you about the startup visa, and then we will move on innovator visa. Could you please tell us about startup visa briefly?
I can indeed. Now, the UK startup visa is some people might say it's a replacement from the old Tier 1 entrepreneur visa, but it might be the government going back on some rules. But it is called the UK startup visa, and it's specifically designed for non-EEA nationals who are new entrepreneurs and want to establish a business in the UK for the first time. And the good thing is, you don't need to be a graduate and you don't need to have secured any initial funding. That's the good news. You will need to have an innovative business idea, and you will need to show that the business idea is scalable so that it can increase, which is one of the key topics. Now, one of the other factors, and this is one of the key factors to both the startup and the innovator visa, is that you will need an endorsement from an endorsing body. And I'll touch upon that now, but since it seems an appropriate time. Now, previously, people would put in business plans, and for those that can remember the old Tier 1 system for ex-PSW, post-study work migrants, they could just show £50,000, or entrepreneurs, they could just show £200,000. Now, then they started to ask you to put in business plans, and then they would be evaluated by caseworkers, and that led to a lot of litigation. It led to a lot of problems, and lots of people being refused who had perfectly good ideas. And it was also open to some fraud as well, because some unscrupulous people would design or write proposals that had no real basis in reality. So what the government has done, which is what they've done with universities and colleges and also with employers, is they've shifted the burden onto what are called endorsing bodies. Now, these are privately run companies and these are companies that will provide you with a letter of endorsement. Now, and it is vital that that you get the letter of endorsement, and I can provide you, or the Home Office website can provide you with details of endorsing bodies. Some of them will look at your plans. Some of them will give you advice, and some of them will undoubtedly charge you to go through their process before they give you the endorsing letter. Now, the endorsing letter is very important, and it's a key factor. So that's the key differentiating factor in respect of the old Tier 1 system. However, there is quite a lot. If you can get the endorsement, then there is quite a lot of flexibility in the startup visa. Now, they are a one-off visa. Now, don't worry about that, because if your business is successful, you can then switch into other types of visas. You can then switch into entrepreneur type visas. You can carry on in the life in the United Kingdom. So they are, as they say, a startup type visa. Positive, you don't need to show any money. And secondly, you can switch into a visa at the end of it. There is also some problems with it, which is that generally startup applicants can't have started their own business in the United Kingdom already. There are exceptions to this. If you've already been granted leave under the startup route or graduate entrepreneur category, or you're under a Tier 4 doctorate extension scheme. So in that respect, there are some exceptions. But the good news is no money. You don't need to be a graduate. After all, some of the most successful business people in the world don't have degrees or never finished school. So that's another thing that's been taken away. And the requirements are fairly simple. You've got to be at least 18 years old. You, as you say, with some exceptions, you can't have been working or running a business in the UK, as I say, unless you're a Tier 1 graduate entrepreneur. You've got your endorsement letter, and the endorsement letter has to be issued within 3 months of the date of your startup application. Now, I pause there for a second because there is some leeway with the Home Office because of coronavirus, especially with the innovators and the innovator visa, because you may have got your endorsement letter, but you may not have been able to travel because of travel restrictions, or sadly, you may have suffered from coronavirus. It doesn't mean to say that you need to start again. The government have publicly announced that they will consider each case on a case-by-case basis. So
I want you pause here for a second. Is there any English requirements?
There is an English language requirement, and the English language as I say, there is the genuineness test in that respect. Now, in respect of the English language, the genuineness test, that should be dealt with by the endorsement letter, because that should show that you are a genuine business startup, or you've got a good idea. As to the English language test, you've got to get to a B2 level, which means the equivalent of an IELTS 5.5 and that's in reading, writing, listening and speaking. So you've got to have that. Now, there is one final requirement, which is that you've got to have at least £945 to support yourself. And this is another positive factor, £630 for each of your dependents. Now, I say positive factor because this is a route where you can bring your dependents in with you into the United Kingdom. So again, it's a more flexible than say the old Tier 4 was at one stage, where you couldn't bring your dependents with you. And also, I believe, I know it is with the Innovator visa, but I believe it will probably be the same with the startup visa, that the dependents of the startup migrant will also be able to work and pretty much do any job that they want to do. That relates to the Innovator visa, but there's no reason to assume that they're not going to allow that to happen with the startup visa. So that's briefly that's the outline of it, Mahbub. Does that help explain the background to what it is? It's basically a way of getting into the United Kingdom if you've got an excellent business idea, but you perhaps don't have £200,000, you don't have a degree, but you have got a really good idea, and that idea has got the rubber stamp from an endorsing body. Because, as I say, it's as if the government have given the endorsing body the power to stamp it. So I think that's a brief summation, really, in respect of what a startup visa is.
So you are trying to say that is very flexible rather than a Tier 1 entrepreneur visa.
Yes, I would say that it's whereas before with the Tier 1 visas, you'd need to have, or say the post-study work visas, you would need to show that you were a graduate and that you had a viable business plan, and you had to show, and you had to show money as well. You had to show a considerable sum of money. You had to show some £50,000 for PSW, or £200,000 for people that weren't PSW. So you might have a brilliant idea. You may not have been to a university. Now you can get into the United Kingdom and bring your family with you if you can get the endorsement. So yeah. I would say it's definitely a move in the right direction. And I'm glad you've covered this topic, Mahbub, because it's a very overlooked type of visa. The PSW visas, the Tier 1 entrepreneur visa, and the Tier 1 type visas that were gradually phased out became more and more complicated, but they did offer people a way into the country. And then for a period of time, it looked like there wasn't going to be a way into the country for business people. And it's well known that migrants often are the most successful business people in the United Kingdom, or at least the most hardworking. And so this is, in my view, it offers more flexibility. What I would say is that there is an extensive list of endorsing bodies. And I took the liberty of reading through some of the companies, and I won't mention their names, but I took the list of reading through them. Now, you will need to, if you want to do this, or you're thinking about a startup visa, what you will need to do is you will need to choose carefully the endorsing company, because I've seen some of them that run programs. One of them was charging, I think it was £15,000 for a program. I think it was to do with aerospace, so it's perhaps not surprising. But there are some companies out there that are clearly set up to make money in providing the endorsing letter, and that means that they're going to go through. And how they plan to do this is what they plan to do is they plan to say, well, we're going to you've got this rough idea. If you pay us, then what we will do is we will make it more home office friendly, or we will teach you more about how the UK works, and then we'll give you the endorsing letter at the end, but it's going to cost you X number of pounds. So there is a huge list of endorsing companies. I suppose the nearest thing that they could be associated to, that people might be familiar with, are, as it were, sponsors, like tier 2 sponsor licenses, or the tier 4 colleges that used to have their licenses. So an endorsing body is a body that essentially has the ability to give you a letter that will get you into the United Kingdom. So that's a really important thing to do. Now, there is one other factor that I need to cover, really, in respect of startup visas, which is they can be made both outside the United Kingdom, and we get a lot. I know you get a lot of viewers, Mahbub, from within the United Kingdom. They can also be made within the United Kingdom, so that's a really positive factor. Now, you could, and what's even more encouraging is that you can apply in country if you were last granted leave to enter as a tier 1 graduate entrepreneur, or tier 2 general, or tier 2 intercompany transfer migrant, a tier 4 general student, or prospective entrepreneur. So there is that the ability to switch into this startup category from a much wider source than there was before. So it's not like you have to just be you've got to have finished your degree, and you've got to have a graduate certificate before you can apply. Lots of people that have got existing visas can apply. And in respect of the Innovator visa, which I'll come to, you can also apply if you come as a general visitor. Now, as long as you come with a general visitor with a letter from an endorsing body. So that might be that you're coming to do their course. So this is quite revolutionary, because it's, to my experience, and I'm sure yours, Mahbub, it's almost been impossible for people to switch into anything from the visit visa. Generally, the Home Office position is that you must go home. But now the position is that even general general visitors, as long as they've come here for the purpose of setting up a business or getting involved in a business, even they can apply. So it really is. It's really a great opportunity for people to start the business up. Another positive factor about it is that it's not only open to individuals, so you can be part of a team. So again, and this shows that it's related to the previous entrepreneur visas and extensions. You can be part of a team, so you don't have to have, if there's two of you that's got a great idea, you don't have to toss a coin to see which one's going to get the visa and bring his family into the United Kingdom and who's got to go home. You can both apply. So that's a positive factor there. So, which is, in my view, excellent news.
Yes, I had a lot of questions, but you covered all things in your discussion. So I have only one little things to know. Someone wanted to know if he or she gets the visa, then does it necessary to invest money here, or how he or she will bring the money from outside the UK?
Well, again, in this particular case, there is, from what I can see from looking at the guidance, it's very different to the previous regime, which is you've got to have, it used to be, say, I'm going to use the £200,000. It used to be you had to have £200,000 in your name, or it could be in a third party's name. And then there were all sorts of silly rules about getting it endorsed and written and what have you. The key thing about this is that you don't actually need to have any money to get the visa. It's the business idea that is the most important factor. Well, it's the business idea accompanied with the endorsement letter. So we've got flexibility about who can apply. Perhaps I believe it will include general visitors who've come for this purpose. It will include tier 4 students, for example, and tier 2 people. It is for new businesses, and you don't need a degree. So there are lots and lots of flexibilities, plus your dependents can join you. But as I say, one of the key things is that the endorsement letter must be obtained. And so that's going to be where it's really important that you contact a reputable company that deals with endorsement, or you use a lawyer or a solicitor that is good at making these types of applications, because there will be, and this is just by doing immigration for some 20 years, there will be people who will abuse the system, who will ultimately, there will be companies, even though they're vetted by the government, that will be starting to sell letters. I hate to say it, but that's just my suspicion, that at some point something will happen. So it's really important that if somebody says, I've got an endorsing body, they'll give you an endorsement letter, and because you don't need any money other than some small maintenance money, that you make sure that company is a good, it has a track record in getting people visas, that it's not being investigated, that there's no dishonesty. This is all new. This is all new, and it's quite exciting, really. And it shows the government realizing that post-Brexit, we're going to need people in. And again, because there's an English language requirement, a lot of this is really turning back to the Commonwealth, because it's an English language requirement. Under when we were in the EU, anybody from Poland or Lithuania who couldn't speak a word of English could just come along here and set up business. Now there's this B2 requirement, and so that, in my view, makes it more like the government are starting to look back historically to where things were many years ago, where it was traditionally people that would come from the subcontinent as migrants and set up shops, as they've done very successfully, as Priti Patel is one of the ideal examples. And if it's not Priti Patel, I think the Chancellor is also from his parents is also from the subcontinent. So there's a joke that whereas the English were in India for several hundred years, now it's a lot of people from the subcontinent that are running this country. And I think we're moving back to that with these new schemes.
Turner, I just want to know if anyone wants to come here. So as a lawyer, how we can help them?
If they want, the key thing they need to do, and as I say, I know your firm are excellent in carrying out the due diligence and checking things and preparing things. The key thing that lawyers will need to do is they are going to need to check that people meet the relevant requirements, that there's no overstaying that's been overlooked, that there is that the person does have the correct endorsement letter, that they do have the relevant amount of maintenance in their account. So our role as lawyers will essentially be vetting the endorsement company and making sure that we introduce people insofar as we can, or let our clients know which are the best companies that will offer the endorsement letter. Now, speaking practically and looking to help people, there will be a range of fees that the endorsement companies charge, and a good lawyer will give you the balance between a good endorsing body and how much they charge. And that's what we can do. Our job is to get your documents together, make sure they're correct, make sure that in our view that you're not and again, I think a preliminary, if you're thinking of a startup visa, the best thing to do is to see your lawyer, go along, see whether you qualify first of all, because you might not be, you might be on a route where you just can't qualify. See your lawyer. They will tell you whether you qualify for the startup visa. Then when it comes to your business idea, they will also be in a position. We're not business consultants, but we've seen a lot of business applications go through. We'll be able to tell you roughly whether you're wasting your time. If your idea is, say, to run a pizza delivery business, then we're going to tell you that Domino's have got there first. So that's not really going to deal with it. Mind you, if you had an app which, or you were developing an app which meant that you could order, say, certain types of object that isn't currently on the market, or you can do it easier or cheaper, then that might be a good idea. And we might say, well, yes, you've got a good idea, and we'll introduce you to this endorsement company. Now, that's also relevant because different endorsement companies deal with different types of business idea. So there are endorsement companies that deal with IT, and there are endorsement companies that deal with engineering, and there are endorsement companies that deal with the service industry. So your lawyer will be able to, as I say, check that you qualify, check that you're not wasting your money making an application, and then also be able to guide you into the right endorsement program or getting the letter. And then also the lawyer will be able to give you a rough idea as to the sort of information you're going to need to provide to the endorsement company. They'll tell you more about market research, but they will check the market research that you've done. But your lawyer will be able to say, well, look, if you go along there with a sheet of one piece of paper and it's written in not very good English, you're either going to have to pay an awful lot of money to go through a very long program, and you're not going to succeed. Or your lawyer might say, well, actually, you need to work on your business idea first. So, to answer it shortly, as lawyers, we have three roles. One, to basically check that everything is, that the application can succeed, so that the person isn't going to waste all their money. That's the first thing that we can do. The second thing we can do is we can then provide some practical experience as to what the Home Office considers to be a good business idea or a bad business idea, and what level of investigation you've done into your own business. There's no, as I say, there's no point just turning up and just saying, I've got this great idea for making face masks out of toilet paper, and can you apply for, or can you help me apply? Because we can help filter that out and say, you need to go away and say how you're going to do it and provide some more details and maybe an example. Then we're going to refer you to the endorsing company. And then finally, what we will then do, and this is probably the most important thing, and I would advise anyone that they must use a reputable lawyer, like Mahbub's firm or myself, like a reputable firm, to actually put all of this information together with a detailed covering letter explaining how you meet each one of the requirements of the rules. These rules are new. I was looking at them earlier. They go on for pages and pages and pages. Now, the one thing that I know is that the Home Office like to say no if there are documents that are missing. So, as I say, we've got those 4 roles, which is to check whether you qualify, check whether you've got a good plan, send you off to the endorsement agency, and then put everything together to send it off. And then hopefully the applications will be turned around quite quickly. I think the Home Office are trying to deal with them within months, even though COVID is carrying on. Hopefully, once it's approved, you'll then get a 2-year visa to get your business up and running.
Yes, I firmly believe our viewers will be benefited from your discussion. For the viewers, I would say, if you want to apply for this kind of visa, of course, you need proper advice from a good lawyer who is dealing this type of visa for a long time. In that case, you can contact with Mr. Paul Turner's firm as well, because he is doing this type of immigration work for 20 years, as I know. So of course you all can go there and you can have the advice from him to succeed in this type of business. Now we will move forward for another topic, which is, as we said, Innovator. So Mr. Turner, I just want to know, what is Innovator visa? Who can apply, and what is the main requirements for Innovator visas?
Well, the Innovator, I wouldn't leave yourself out of the equation, Mahbub, but I'd happily recommend clients to you, because I know your firm is a very professional firm as well. So, and before I go on to that, there's a lot of people watching this. There is a massive difference in the type of quality of firms that do immigration work. As Mahbub said, I've been doing this for 20 years. Mahbub isn't being paid to be talking to you on Saturday, and neither am I. We do this because we want you to know what is the right thing to do and to share the information. There are so many bad lawyers. It is so important that you find the right lawyer that can do the right job. Otherwise, you will end up coming to Mahbub or me, and it will be very difficult to sort it out. Now, turning away from that to the Innovator visa. The Innovator visa is, as it were, the son of the startup visa. It's a follow-up in some respects to the startup visa. And again, there are a lot of benefits to this visa. And again, it really isn't been exploited. I think the first year they brought it out, it was so unknown. There were about 4 applications and about only 2 were approved, which is quite strange, really. Now, the Innovator visa is suitable for experienced business people who are looking to set up a new business. And the key test is it's got to be innovative, viable, and scalable. Now, what that means is innovative means new. It's got to be that you've got some new idea. And again, it's often people from abroad that do have the new idea, or they're bringing something to the United Kingdom which we just don't have. That's the first thing. Viable. There's no point saying, well, if I make a paper aeroplane and I throw it high enough, it will get to the moon. It's never going to happen. So the business has got to be a viable business. There's no point saying I'm going to, I've got some cheap software that I can access in China and I can make iPhones for £10, because it's not viable. So if the business has got to be something that is capable of success. For example, who would have thought Uber would be a great idea so many years ago? Who would have thought buying clothes off the internet would be a great idea so many years ago? One of the things about clothes are you want to try them on first, and yet now more clothes probably are bought online than they were. And so the person that first of all thought, well, actually, if I sell them online and then I take them back if they don't fit, this is going to make it a lot easier for people that don't want or don't have time to go to the shops. So it's got to be new, it's got to be viable, and this is the last thing, it's got to be scalable. Now, what does scalable mean? Now, scalable means 2 things. It means it's got to be able to change in size. Now, this sounds silly, but that means it's got to be able to get bigger. Now, if you said, well, I've got a great business idea, but it's just going to get smaller, then it's not going to succeed. So you've got to be able to show it's new, and you've got to be able to show it's going to succeed, and that you can build it up, say franchise it. Maybe you've got this idea of doing something in a local area that you can then sell and franchise it up. So that's the 3 key ideas. So applicants have got to provide a new business idea, and generally the business won't exist. So it can exist if you've been working on a plan, and a lot of people with great ideas have been doing it for 2 or 3 years, and you formed a company and you've got everything almost together and you're ready to go, but you haven't properly, and you sold a few trial models and everybody says it's great, then yes, you can still apply. So that's really good news. So it's not that it can't exist. The idea is that it's not already in existence. So if you turned out and you said, I've got this great idea, it's called Uber 2 and it's about cars, then they would probably say, well, this already exists. And so no, we're not going to do that. Again, you can apply on your own or with part of an entrepreneurial team. Now, again, you note the word entrepreneurial. There are clear parallels to the old entrepreneurial scheme. So in that respect, that's good. There's another positive in this, which is joint venture arrangements may also be acceptable. Now, this is also really good if you've got the idea or you've got the business, but you just haven't got the money to make the prototype or the first 3 or 4 models to show, and you have a joint venture company that's prepared to put money in. So that's a positive. So again, joint venture is open to this type of visa, and it can be any sector. So it's not just limited to, say, IT or engineering, or medical profession. So it can be open to any sector at all. So that in itself is, in my view, a really positive factor. Now, again, there is one caveat to that, and that's property development. So if your idea is to do with property, you'll need to have something very, very new or special. So you can't come over here and say, well, I've got this idea of renting out loads of properties and in some special way, because that's not really that's not going to work. Now, the requirements are, and money does come into this, but it's not a lot of money. You've got to be 18 years old, which is reasonable. You must have at least £50,000 to invest in your business. So that's why the joint venture can come into it. So you've got to have about £50,000, or you've got to have invested 50,000. So as I say, if you've already spent years making this model or getting this business together, and then you've got everything ready to go, and you've got your 3 models, and you've got hardly any money left, as long as you can show that you've spent 50,000 or you've spent 48,000 and you've got 2,000 left, then that's good enough in itself. Now, there is good news here, and that's why I said that the Innovator visa is in some ways the son of the startup visa, which is if you're a tier 1 graduate entrepreneur, and I don't think that there's an awful lot of them, or you have completed your 2-year startup visa, you don't need to show the finances, because they will be looking back at the history of your case. So if you've completed the 2 years, and you can't extend the startup visa, it's only for 2 years. Your business either succeeds and then you go into a different category, or it doesn't. Now, in this case, and this is really, there's some good benefits to this. If you've done the startup visa and your business is doing really well, or it's doing well, then you won't have to show that you've got £50,000. Now, if it's a new business, again, you're going to need the endorsing body. So again, the endorsing body is going to have to say that the business is viable, scalable, this is why I think there are parallels with some of the previous schemes, because the endorsing body has got to say that it's a good idea, it can get bigger, and that it's going to have to say that you're going to spend most of your time working on this. Now, that seems a little strange that an independent body is going to be able to make a judgment on what you're going to do with your time. And so that rings a small alarm bell in my head, that the endorsing body is put in there by the government to filter out people that are buying companies off the shelf or buying ideas off the shelf. So in there, there is this sort of policing of the Innovator visa by the endorsing body. Now, the endorsing body is also going to be looking at what you've done. So it's going to look to see whether there's been any significant achievements, and they're going to do that by looking at what you've done previously against the original business plan. And they're going to compare it with the original endorsement. So if you've got an endorsement letter based upon your business plan or your idea, and then you've got your 2-year visa, and then you've been working and you've been employing people, when you come to the Innovator visa, the endorsing body is going to look and see what's actually happened over the last 2 years, and see whether you've been more successful or you haven't been successful. So this is kind of a way of avoiding people that say used to get the £200,000 investment, get the visa, do nothing for a few years, and then just before the extension, they would have a very active year. So this body is going to be looking at what you've been doing. And in particular, it's going to be looking to see whether you're in Companies House, whether you're a director, whether the business is active, trading, and in particular, what it's been doing for the last 12 months. And it's going to be looking at your role. So they're probably going to be going through your books. So they're going to be checking whether you've been actually at the premises, what you've been doing, who's been signing the documents. So if you are going to do it, you have to use an endorsing body to do it, you need to make sure that you have been involved in the business and you haven't simply got the visa and then thought, great, I've got 2 years free time and then I can apply for an Innovator visa. Again, the endorsement letter's got to be issued within 3 months. That is the Home Office who acknowledge coronavirus. They're going to, that doesn't matter. They will look at your application on a case-by-case basis. You've got to speak English to B2, and which again is 5.5 across all 4 types: English speaking, writing, and listening, which shouldn't be difficult. Again, there isn't a requirement, as far as I can see, for you to have a degree, which is again excellent news. And as I say, this is also important. You might go to an endorsing body that's recommended to you by your solicitor, and the endorsing body may actually put some of the money together, and they may give you some of the money, or they may invest some of the money. So some of the £50,000 can be from a third-party source. So that's a really good idea. However, and this is why it's important to see a lawyer such as Mahbub or myself, £50,000 is the minimum needed. Some endorsing bodies will require you to show that you've got more than £50,000 and before they give you the letter. So that's again a reason to go and see your lawyer, to check whether you've got the basic framework, and then also to point you in the direction of an endorsing body that's not going to say, yes, we'll give you a letter if you've got £1 million. If there's another body that will give you the endorsing letter if you've got £50,000, or one that will say, your idea is so fantastic, we'll invest £25,000. So that's another real role or for the lawyers to get involved with. Now, the endorsement criteria, again, for the Innovator visa briefly are innovation, genuine original business plan that meets new or existing market needs. Now, with coronavirus, we've seen lots of new ideas because we've not been able to go out. So that's presented lots of people with new opportunities. Viability, as I say, it's got to, you've got to be able to show that you can do the job and it's a good business and that the business will increase. As I say, again, turning to the switching part of this, and this is really a big relaxation of the system. You can switch into this from, you can apply from abroad, but you can do it if you are a startup, tier 1 graduate, tier 1 entrepreneur, tier 2 ICT, or if you're a visitor. So if you've got a letter of support from an endorsing body, and if you're a general visitor, then you can apply for the Innovator visitor. So that's really excellent news, because I've been doing this for years and visitors have generally been shut out of anything. Again, you can be part of a team. Another thing is the startup visa I think is only around about, it's less than £400 for the startup visa. So it's actually very, very low compared to Home Office fees. An application for leave to remain based on a family would cost £2,000 a person, more or less, with all the Home Office fees put together. So it's quite low. The actual fee for the investor, if you apply in the United Kingdom and you want to switch, it's only £1,277. So again, this is a cheaper way of actually getting a useful visa. Now, one of the other conditions are that you can develop other businesses while you're in the United Kingdom. So you can develop and work on other ideas. So you're not just limited to one. So in some of the previous rules, you were stuck with your business and you couldn't do anything else. So if you have another idea or something else clicks and you think that will work, you can do it. However, if it's employment and it's disguised as a new business, then the Home Office could cancel your visa. Some other just minor points. They've got what's called Innovator visa checkpoints. So at 6, 12 and 24 months, you've got to stay in touch with your endorsing body and show them that you're making progress with your business. Again, this cuts back on the old, I've got myself a 3-year visa, and once I've got my 3-year visa, I can just go on holiday for 6 months or 5 months, and then in the last year, recruit a couple of people and not do very much. So they've obviously cracked down on that. And so for at least for the first 2 years, you're going to be policed, which means making sure that your name, this is my advice, that you are involved in your business and you haven't just employed somebody to do all the work whilst you enjoy sightseeing in the United Kingdom. You've got to show that you are involved, because otherwise the endorsing body will withdraw their endorsement and that will cause the end of your visa. Now, there is something really, really good about this particular type of visa. Now, it's my understanding, looking at this, that really one can move to settlement after some 3 years of the Innovator visa. So this would, if I'm reading the rules correctly, would seem to be, and there are a number of criteria that are here, that this is a short route to indefinite leave to remain. To qualify for indefinite leave to remain, you're going to need to satisfy a number of tests, and you're going to have to show that for the last 12 months you've been involved on a day-to-day business. And that's something that runs through all of these new visas. It's, you have to show a physical presence. I've seen lots of cases where people have got the visas, they've invested the £200,000, and then they've gone to Dubai for 11 months. And then they've then come back for a couple of months and then gone away again. And then they wonder why the Home Office raised questions. So the government have sought to cut down on that by getting these endorsing bodies to check, which is another reason why it's important that you speak to your lawyer to get the right endorsing body. You want one that's fair, that will help you, maybe invest in your business, but not one that's going to be like the KGB and visiting your premises every 3 days to check that you're working, or is is taking their role too seriously or beyond what it needs to be. So that's where the lawyer can come in. Again, turning into the indefinite leave to remain, you've got to show at least a couple of the following. that you've invested at least £50,000, that you've created at least five full-time jobs in the UK for resident workers who have an average of £25,000 a year, or that the business has created at least 10 full-time jobs with no average salary requirement. The number of customers has doubled within the last 3 years and is currently higher than your competitors, and that you've if it's an innovative idea, that you've applied for a patent, and that you've generated at least £1 million in the last year in the accounts, and essentially in the last full year it's got to have generated £1 million, and so and lastly, and this is the Dubai question, if you like, that you haven't spent more than 180 days outside the United Kingdom in the last 12 months over the last 3 years of the application. So you're going to get the startup visa is going to be, I would say, fairly straightforward and not particularly difficult. To get the Innovator visa, you're going to need to work really closely with your lawyer, and you're going to need to do that because you're going to need to speak to them at the beginning so that they can guide you as to the best endorsing body, because getting the startup shouldn't be too difficult. Getting the Innovator visa is going to involve a bit more work, and if you get the Innovator visa, you are going to have to work quite hard, but the reward is, as I say, that it leads to indefinite leave to remain very quickly. Also, you can bring your dependents over, so that's another really positive factor. And as I mentioned, also the dependents are not going to be restricted in what they can do, so they can pretty much do whatever work they want. They may put in some small restrictions as to what they do, but at the moment, I think the policy is that they can do whatever they want to do. So that might help with the finances in respect of the early days of your company. But again, if I draw all of this to a close, the startup looks to me to be a lot easier to get into the country for 2 years. But in those 2 years, you're going to have to work hard. I would say you're going to have to also liaise with your lawyer to make sure that you are on track, and maybe have regular meetings with the lawyer as well as the endorsing body. For the Innovator visa, you're going to have to really work closely with your lawyer, because whilst it offers great rewards, there is a great deal to do. And the only way you're going to succeed, and as I say, other benefits are you can switch from being a student. You don't need a degree to get into the country. You don't need to show any money. All you need to be is bright, have a great business idea, and see a proper lawyer who will guide you. If you do that and you work hard, there is no reason why you can't get settlement very quickly in the United Kingdom. Now, back to you, Mahbub. I hope I've explained a fair amount.
Yes, you are. You have explained very nicely, and I believe our viewers will be benefited from your explanation and from your advice. But we are almost in our last minute, so we have to finish our program. But before going to do that, I have 2-3 questions. One is from a student who is studying here as a Tier 4 student, is staying here as a Tier 4 student, but he wanted to know, can he switch his Tier 4 student visa to the Innovator visa if his father or mother invest money for him?
I don't see any reason why he can't switch into the Tier 4 visa. And it might be that he's it might be that he might want to switch into the startup visa. Looking just quickly at the guidance, in fact, the Innovator visa route is probably not the right route for him. It's startup, Tier 1 graduate, Tier 1 entrepreneur, Tier 2 general, Tier 2 ICT, skilled worker, that's intercompany transfer for those that don't know it, or visitor. Now, whereas the startup visa allows Tier 4 students, the Innovator visa doesn't expressly mention them. So if he's thinking about it and he's a Tier 4 student, he might be better off going for the startup visa, because there's less, you don't need to show money, it's open to Tier 4 students, and in my view, it will be a lot easier to get than an Innovator visa. If you had to ask me, Mahbub, what would I go for in his, what would I go for? I would go for the startup visa first.
All right. I have another question from my country. He's viewing our program from Dhaka. He wanted to know, he has a business, established business in Dhaka. So if he wants to apply for UK visa, in that case, there is one regulation in Bangladesh. Bangladeshi money cannot be disposable to other country without the permission of Bangladesh Bank, which is the central bank of the country. So in that case, what he can do?
Well, if he's going for the startup visa, he isn't going to need to get the visa. He's not going to need to initially show the money or have the money or bring the money with him if in the startup visa. As to how he gets the money out of Bangladesh, I'm not sure whether he can withdraw it in smaller amounts and perhaps transfer it. But as I say, with the startup visa, money isn't the key thing. So he doesn't need any initial funding for the startup visa. So really, if I were him, and he's a established businessman and he's got a great business idea and he's very industrious, I would get the startup visa and then get into the United Kingdom. And then once he's in the United Kingdom, then work on getting the money out of Bangladesh.
Yeah, that would be the great idea. I think so. I have another question from you from your last program. The gentleman was to your last program, and this is not about startup or innovator visa. This is all about TOEIC issue again. He lives in Scotland. I just want to sum up his question. His question is a very big one. He came in this country in 2009 as a student, and he sat for the TOEIC exam in 2012, and 2013 he got married with a British girl, and he applied for spouse visa as a dependent of the British in 2014. Then Home Office said you have a TOEIC, so his visa was refused. Then he appealed. His appeal was successful, and then he got 2.5 years visa. After 2.5 years in 2018, when he applied for the extension, that time his visa got refused again, and then he appealed, and then a visa was given him, which is not there is nothing mentioned about the route, which is 5 years or 10 years. And when he completed his 10 years, Last December, he applied for ILR. At that time, his ILR was refused, and even he hasn't given appeal right. They said you have the TOEIC, so now he wants to know how he can clear his TOEIC issue from here and how he can apply again for ILR, because the existing visa, it doesn't say anything when he can apply for ILR after 5 years or after 10 years. So what would be your advice for him?
My advice for him would be that he should, I wouldn't say make a fresh application because that's a lot of money to start with. I would say that what he should do is look to judicially review the decision. From what you've told me, there are 3 issues. The first issue is that he has cleared his name, and he therefore, following what the Court of Appeal have said in all the consent orders, if you've proved that you didn't cheat, then you should be treated as if you've been here continually lawfully. So that's the first thing. And so I would challenge, that would be my first ground. The second ground would be that they've failed to provide him with any reasons. So that if they've just issued him a visa without telling him on what basis they've issued him a visa, then that's, I would say, is the second ground of challenge. And then the third ground of challenge would be that if they are resurrecting the TOEIC issue, or they're trying to rely on the TOEIC issue for the break, then I would include the various reports or quotes from the reports from the APPG. So I would say that he ought to challenge it on the basis that having cleared his name, following the Court of Appeal consent orders that came after the case of Arsan, the Home Office agreed that anybody who can clear their name after an appeal should be put back into the same position they were before the allegation was made. Now, if he's cleared his name, then realistically, 2.5 years was probably the right amount of time because he hadn't been here for 10, but now he's been here for 10, then that's the strongest ground. And then the second ground, which is, as I say, which is the second strongest ground, is the failure to provide reasons. I've had clients where they've won appeals where there's been allegations of TOEIC, or where the person's been here for more than 10 years, they've got the KOLL, the English language, and the Home Office have just sent them 2.5 years with no reasons. And I've just judicially reviewed the failure to provide reasons, and the Home Office have conceded because they have a duty to provide reasons. And so I think the case of MK. So the Home Office have a duty to provide reasons. They haven't given him any reasons. Plus, they're still treating him as if he was an overstayer. So they are still holding the TOEIC issue against him, even though he cleared his name. So for him, it's judicial review. He can lodge it in Scotland, or he can lodge it in England and Wales. Now, he should lodge it in Scotland, but the court is flexible, and I've seen people lodge cases who live in Scotland in England and Wales, and I've represented them in court. And as long as the court accepts a jurisdiction which it has the discretion to, then it can be heard. And the only reason why I say that is that the courts in England and Wales deal with a lot more of these cases. So it might be that he wants to speak to a lawyer and find, to decide which court he wants to go to. But does he have a case? Yes. Does he have a strong case? Yes. Is it a case I would advise fighting? Definitely. And if he fights it, he should get ILR. As long as he's got KOLL, and as long as he's well, obviously he's passed the English test, and as long as there's no other criminal convictions, he should get ILR.
All right. Thank you very much for your advice. We have to stop here, Mr. Turner. I hope we will get you again in our program. And I believe our viewers already benefited from your discussion. You have discussed startup and innovator visa from its origin, and I think you mentioned everything. I had a lot of questions, but you already mentioned everything. That's why I did not make those questions to you, as you covered pros and cons of this type of visas. Thank you very much once again for being here. We are really honored to have you here, and hopefully we will get you again and again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Mahbub. It's always a pleasure, and I wish you and every one of our viewers stay well in these dangerous times. Thank you again, and God bless to everyone.
Thank you.